The dusty road to Montana City stretched endlessly before her, and Rosalind Parker clutched her worn leather satchel tighter as three men on horseback appeared on the ridge ahead, their silhouettes dark against the afternoon sun of 1876. She had been traveling alone for 2 weeks now, selling her carefully prepared herbal remedies to homesteaders and small settlements scattered across Montana territory. Her father had taught her everything he knew about medicinal plants before he died last winter, leaving her with little more than his knowledge and a determination to survive. At 22 years old, Rosalind had learned quickly that a woman alone in this vast wilderness needed more than just skill with herbs. She needed protection, and she had been trading her remedies for safe passage through dangerous territories ever since she left Denver. The riders descended the ridge at a leisurely pace, and Rosalind's heart hammered against her ribs. She scanned the landscape for somewhere to hide, but the open prairie offered nothing except sage brush and scattered rocks. Her hand moved instinctively to the small knife tucked into her boot, though she knew it would be useless against 3 armed men. As they drew closer, she could make out their faces. 2 of them looked rough, with unkempt beards and hard eyes that sized her up like a piece of merchandise. The third man rode slightly ahead, and something about his posture made her pause. He sat tall in the saddle, his broad shoulders relaxed but alert, and when he removed his hat to wipe his brow, she saw dark hair and a face that might have been carved from granite. "Afternoon, miss," the lead rider called out, his voice carrying a smooth drawl that sent warmth through her despite her fear. "You look a long way from anywhere." Rosalind straightened her spine and met his gaze. His eyes were an unexpected shade of deep brown, almost amber in the sunlight, and they held intelligence rather than threat. Still, she had learned not to trust easily. "I am headed to Montana City," she replied, keeping her voice steady. "I sell herbal remedies and medicines." One of the other men, a stocky fellow with a scar across his cheek, leaned forward in his saddle. "That's so. We could use something for old Charlie here. He has got a cough that will not quit." The third man, presumably Charlie, began hacking as if on cue, a wet rattling sound that made Rosalind wince. She recognized that cough immediately. She had treated dozens like it. "That sounds like lung inflammation," she said, relaxing slightly. "I have mullein and horehound that would help, mixed with honey if you have any." The lead rider studied her with those penetrating eyes, and she felt exposed under his gaze, as if he could see past her brave facade to the exhausted, frightened woman beneath. "Name is Isaac Landry," he said, dismounting with an easy grace that spoke of years in the saddle. "These are my men, Tom and Charlie. We have been tracking cattle thieves through this territory for the past week." "You are lawmen?" Rosalind asked, hope flickering in her chest. "I own the Triple L Ranch about 10 miles south of Montana City," Isaac explained. "Lost 30 head to rustlers last month. The sheriff is stretched too thin, so I am handling it myself." Rosalind opened her satchel and pulled out 2 small pouches of dried herbs. "For the cough," she said, handing them to Charlie. "Steep 1 spoonful in hot water twice daily. It should clear within a week." Charlie took the pouches with a grateful nod, but when he reached for his coin purse, Rosalind shook her head. "I would rather barter," she said, glancing at Isaac. "These herbs in exchange for safe passage to Montana City. I have heard there are dangerous men on this road." Isaac's expression shifted, something unreadable flickering across his features. He studied her for a long moment, taking in her threadbare dress, the worn boots, the determined set of her jaw. Then he did something that surprised her. He smiled, and it transformed his entire face, softening the hard edges and revealing a warmth she had not expected. Keep your herbs, he said quietly. I will guard you for free. The words hung in the air between them, weighted with something more than simple kindness. Rosalind felt her breath catch, uncertainty warring with the strange pull she felt toward this man. I do not accept charity, she said, lifting her chin. It is not charity. Isaac's voice was firm but gentle. It is the right thing to do. Besides, we are heading to Montana City ourselves. You might as well ride with us. Tom and Charlie exchanged glances, but neither man objected. After a moment, Rosalind nodded, though she kept the herb pouches in her hand. Then take these for your friend anyway, she insisted. A trade for the company, at least. Isaac's smile widened and he gestured to his horse, a magnificent bay stallion. You can ride with me. Your feet look about ready to give out. Rosalind glanced down at her dusty boots and had to admit he was right. She had been walking since dawn and blisters had formed on both heels. Still, climbing onto a horse with a strange man felt intimate in a way that made her pulse quicken. I can manage, she started to say, but Isaac was already beside her, his hand extended. I do not doubt that you can manage, he said, his amber eyes holding hers. But you do not have to, not today. There was something in his tone that made her walls crumble just a fraction. Rosalind took his hand, feeling the calluses on his palm, the strength in his grip as he helped her mount. She settled behind him, acutely aware of the warmth radiating from his body, the solid muscles of his back against her chest. Hold on, Isaac said, and Rosalind hesitantly wrapped her arms around his waist. They rode through the afternoon, the landscape rolling past in shades of gold and green. Tom and Charlie rode ahead, giving them a measure of privacy that felt deliberate. Rosalind found herself relaxing against Isaac's back, lulled by the steady rhythm of the horse's gait. Where are you from? Isaac asked after a while, his voice rumbling through his chest where she pressed against him. Denver, Rosalind replied. My father was a physician there. He taught me everything about healing plants and remedies. He died last winter, pneumonia. The words still hurt to say. I tried everything I knew, but it was not enough. Isaac's hand came down to cover hers where they clasped at his waist, a brief touch of comfort. I am sorry. They rode in silence for a moment before Rosalind asked, What about you? Have you always been a rancher? My father started the Triple L when I was just a boy, Isaac said. We came out here in '68, right after the war. He died 3 years ago, left the ranch to me and my sister. You have a sister, Margaret. She is married now, lives in town with her husband. They run the general store. There was affection in his voice when he spoke of her. She has been after me to find a wife and settle down properly, but ranch life does not leave much time for courting. Rosalind felt an unexpected twinge at the mention of a wife, which was absurd. She had known this man for barely 2 hours. Why Montana City? Isaac asked. It is not much more than a wide spot in the road. Exactly, Rosalind said. No other healers, no physicians. People need what I can offer, and I can make a living there. It can be rough. Cattle drives come through and the saloons get rowdy. A woman alone might find it difficult. I have managed so far. Rosalind heard the defensiveness in her own voice and tried to soften it. I appreciate your concern, but I have learned to take care of myself. Isaac did not respond immediately, but she felt the tension in his shoulders. Finally, he said, I do not doubt your strength, Rosalind, but strength and stubbornness are not always enough to keep a person safe. Before she could respond, Tom called out from ahead, Riders coming in fast. Isaac's entire body shifted, muscles coiling with readiness. Hold tight, he commanded, and suddenly they were galloping, the wind whipping Rosalind's hair free from its pins. She clung to Isaac, her heart pounding as she glimpsed 4 men racing toward them from the west. Rustlers, Isaac shouted over the thunder of hooves. Tom, Charlie, defensive positions. Everything happened in a blur of motion. Isaac wheeled his horse around, placing himself between Rosalind and the approaching riders. Tom and Charlie had their rifles out, and Isaac drew his revolver with practiced ease. The four men pulled up short, seeing they were outnumbered in terms of readiness if not numbers. "That is far enough," Isaac called out, his voice hard as iron. "State your business." The lead rustler, a thin man with a hawk-like face, held up his hands in mock surrender. "Just passing through, friend. No need for hostility." "I know who you are, Davies," Isaac said coldly. "I know you have been stealing cattle from every ranch between here and Fort Benton. Turn around and ride out, or I will bring you in to the sheriff myself." Davies's eyes flicked to Rosalind, and something cruel crossed his face. "Mighty protective of your lady friend, Landry. Maybe we should get better acquainted with her." The world seemed to slow down. Isaac's gun came up in one fluid motion, and the crack of the shot echoed across the prairie. Dirt exploded at Davies's horse's feet, making the animal rear and dance sideways. "The next one goes between your eyes," Isaac said, his voice deadly calm. "Ride out. Now." For a tense moment, no one moved. Then Davies jerked his reins, spat into the dust, and wheeled his horse around. His men followed, and soon they were disappearing into the distance. Isaac did not lower his gun until they were completely out of sight. When he finally holstered it, Rosalind realized she was shaking. "Are you hurt?" Isaac asked, twisting in the saddle to look at her. His hand came up to cup her face, gentle despite the violence he had just displayed. "Rosalind, talk to me." "I am fine," she managed, though her voice trembled. "You saved me." "Those men are dangerous," Isaac said, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone in a gesture that felt achingly tender. "Davies has wanted posters in 3 territories, if he had gotten his hands on you." He did not finish the sentence, but he did not need to. Rosalind understood exactly what would have happened, and the knowledge made her stomach turn. "Thank you," she whispered. Isaac's eyes searched hers, and Rosalind saw something fierce and protective burning in their depths. "I meant what I said earlier. I will keep you safe." They rode more cautiously after that, Tom and Charlie flanking them with rifles at the ready. As the sun began to sink toward the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, the wooden buildings of Montana City appeared in the distance. It was indeed not much of a town, just a single main street lined with false-fronted buildings, a church steeple rising above them all. But to Rosalind, exhausted and still shaken from the encounter with Davies, it looked like salvation. "There is a boarding house run by Mrs. Chen," Isaac said as they rode down the main street. "Clean rooms, good food. I will see you settled there." "I cannot afford much," Rosalind admitted quietly. "Mrs. Chen has been having trouble with her joints," Isaac said. "I am sure she would appreciate your herbs more than coin." He pulled up in front of a neat 2-story building with a painted sign that read Chen's Boarding House. Before Rosalind could dismount, Isaac was there, his hands on her waist, lifting her down with easy strength. For a moment they stood close together, his hands still on her waist, her palms resting on his chest. "Will I see you again?" Rosalind asked, then immediately felt foolish for the question. Isaac's expression softened. "I have business in town tomorrow. Maybe I could stop by, make sure you are settling in all right." "I would like that," Rosalind said, and meant it more than she cared to admit. Mrs. Chen turned out to be a tiny Chinese woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She looked Rosalind up and down, then quoted a price that made Rosalind's heart sink. Before she could speak, Isaac stepped forward. "Mrs. Chen, Miss Parker here is a healer, knows all about herbs and remedies." I seem to recall you mentioning your hands have been troubling you. Mrs. Chen's expression shifted, interest sparking in her dark eyes. Arthritis. Gets worse every winter. Rosalind immediately opened her satchel, pulling out several pouches. I have willow bark for pain, turmeric for inflammation, and this salve with arnica that you rub directly on the joints. It should help significantly. Mrs. Chen took the remedies, examining them with a practiced eye. After a moment, she nodded. 1 month room and board for these, plus you make more when I run out. Deal. Relief flooded through Rosalind. Deal. Isaac smiled, that transformative expression that made Rosalind's heart skip. I will leave you to get settled then. Tom, Charlie, let us get those horses bedded down. As he turned to leave, Rosalind caught his arm. Isaac, thank you for everything. He covered her hand with his touch warm and solid. Sleep well, Rosalind. I will see you tomorrow. Rosalind watched him walk away, something unfamiliar and wonderful blooming in her chest. She had been alone for so long, fighting for survival, that she had forgotten what it felt like to have someone care about her welfare. Isaac Landry had known her for less than a day, yet he had protected her, helped her, asked for nothing in return. Mrs. Chen cleared her throat, a knowing look on her weathered face. That one is a good man, honest, rare out here. I just met him, Rosalind protested, but Mrs. Chen just laughed. I have eyes, girl. I see how he looks at you, like you are water and he has been dying of thirst. She picked up Rosalind's bag. Come. I show you room, you wash up, eat something. Tomorrow you can set up your herbs and start bringing in business. The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window that overlooked the main street. Rosalind sank onto the bed, exhaustion finally catching up with her. Through the window, she could see Isaac and his men leading their horses toward the livery stable. Even from this distance, she could pick out Isaac's tall form, the confident way he moved. She touched her face where his hand had cupped her cheek, remembering the gentleness of that gesture despite the danger they had just faced. Something was happening between them, something that felt both terrifying and inevitable. Rosalind had never expected to find this in Montana City. She had come here for survival, for a chance to build a life from her father's knowledge. She had not come looking for love. But as she watched Isaac disappear into the livery stable, Rosalind could not deny the truth beating in her heart. Something had shifted when he said those words. Keep your herbs, I will guard you for free. It had not been about the herbs or the protection. It had been about him seeing her, truly seeing her and choosing to care. That night, Rosalind dreamed of amber eyes and gentle hands, of riding across endless prairies with strong arms keeping her safe. The next morning dawned clear and warm, promising another hot Montana summer day. Rosalind woke early, dressed in her second dress, which was only marginally less worn than the first, and braided her auburn hair into a neat plait. Mrs. Chen had set up a small table in the parlor where Rosalind could display her herbs and remedies, and she spent the early hours arranging them carefully, writing small cards describing each one's purpose. She had barely finished when the first customer arrived, an elderly man with a persistent cough. Then came a young mother whose baby had colic, followed by a rancher with a badly infected cut on his hand. Word spread quickly in a small town, and by mid-morning, Rosalind had a steady stream of people seeking her help. She was mixing a poultice for a farmer's sprained ankle when the door opened and Isaac walked in, hat in hand. Rosalind's heart leaped at the sight of him, and she had to force herself to focus on her task. I can see you have been busy, Isaac said, his voice warm with approval. He nodded to the waiting customers, several of whom greeted him by name. Montana City apparently has many ailments, Rosalind replied, tying off the cloth around the poultice. "Apply this twice daily, Mr. Henderson, and stay off that ankle for at least 3 days." The farmer paid her with a silver dollar and a promise to send his wife by with eggs and butter. After he left, there was a brief lull in customers, and Isaac approached the table. "I was thinking," he said, turning his hat in his hands in a gesture that struck Rosalind as oddly nervous for such a confident man. "There is a dance at the church hall Saturday night. I wondered if you might accompany me." Rosalind felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I have not been to a dance in years. I am not sure I remember how." "I am not much of a dancer myself," Isaac admitted with a slight smile, "but it would give me an excuse to spend time with you without half the town watching through Mrs. Chen's windows." Rosalind glanced toward the window where, sure enough, several faces quickly disappeared. She laughed, surprising herself with the lightness of the sound. "Then yes, I would be happy to go with you." Isaac's smile widened into a full grin that made him look younger, almost boyish. "Good. That is good. I will pick you up at 7. He seemed about to say something else when the door burst open and a young boy ran in, his face streaked with tears. "Miss Parker, you have got to come quick. My pa, he is hurt bad." Rosalind was already grabbing her satchel. "What happened?" "Horse threw him. He hit his head on a rock and he will not wake up." Isaac was beside her in an instant. "Where?" "The old Miller place, about 2 miles out." "My horse is at the livery," Isaac said. "We can be there in 10 minutes." They ran through town, Isaac's long legs eating up the distance. At the livery, he quickly saddled his bay stallion while Rosalind tried to calm the crying boy, whose name she learned was Timothy. Within minutes, all 3 of them were mounted, Timothy sitting in front of Isaac, Rosalind behind, and they were racing out of town. The Miller place was a small homestead, barely more than a shack with a vegetable garden and a rickety corral. A woman stood in the yard, wringing her hands while a man lay motionless on the ground nearby. Blood matted his hair, and his face was pale as death. Rosalind slid from the horse before it fully stopped, dropping to her knees beside the injured man. She pressed her fingers to his throat, relieved to find a pulse, though it was weak and thready. "Help me get him inside," she commanded, and Isaac immediately complied, lifting the man as if he weighed nothing. The woman, who introduced herself as Sarah Miller through her tears, led them to a bed where they laid him down gently. Rosalind examined the wound, her father's training taking over. The skull did not seem fractured, which was fortunate, but there was significant swelling. She mixed a cool compress with witch hazel and laid it on the injury, then prepared a tincture of skullcap and valerian to reduce inflammation and prevent seizures. "He needs to be kept quiet and still," she told Sarah. "Wake him every few hours, make sure he can respond. If he starts vomiting or having convulsions, send for me immediately." "Will he be all right?" Sarah asked, clutching young Timothy to her side. "The next 24 hours will tell us," Rosalind said honestly. "But he is strong, and the wound is not as bad as it could have been. I will come back this evening to check on him." They left the Millers with instructions and promises, riding back to town at a slower pace. Rosalind felt drained, the weight of responsibility heavy on her shoulders. What if she had done something wrong? What if the man died because she missed something? As if sensing her thoughts, Isaac reached back to squeeze her hand. "You did everything right. I could see it in how you moved, how quickly you knew what to do. That man is lucky you were in town." "I hope so," Rosalind murmured. That evening, Isaac insisted on accompanying her back to the Miller homestead. They found the injured man awake, though groggy and confused. Rosalind changed the dressing, left more herbs, and pronounced him on the road to recovery. Sarah Miller cried with relief and tried to pay Rosalind with a scrawny chicken, which she accepted graciously despite knowing the family could barely afford to part with it. On the ride back to town, the sun setting in a blaze of crimson and gold, Isaac said quietly, "You have a gift, Rosalind. What you did today saved that man's life." "My father had the gift," Rosalind replied. "I just remember what he taught me." "No." Isaac's voice was firm. "You have the skill, yes, but you also have the heart for it. I watched you with Sarah and Timothy, how you calmed them, gave them hope. That is not something that can be taught." Rosalind felt tears prick her eyes, unexpected and overwhelming. It had been so long since anyone acknowledged her work, since anyone saw her as more than just a desperate woman trying to survive. "Thank you," she whispered. Isaac brought the horse to a stop on a small rise overlooking the town. Lights were beginning to appear in windows, warm and welcoming against the gathering darkness. He turned in the saddle, his hand coming up to cup her face again, that gesture that was becoming achingly familiar. "Rosalind Parker," he said softly, "I know we have known each other for barely more than a day. I know this is too fast, probably too forward. But I need you to know that when I saw you on that road yesterday, something in me recognized something in you. I cannot explain it better than that." Rosalind's breath caught. She could feel the warmth of his palm against her cheek, see the honesty shining in those amber eyes. Everything she had been taught about propriety and proper courtship told her to pull away, to maintain distance. But her heart, that wild thing she had been trying so hard to control, had other ideas. "I feel it too," she admitted. "It scares me." "Me too," Isaac said, and then he smiled that wonderful smile. "But I think maybe the best things are a little scary." They stayed there for a long moment, the world narrowing to just the two of them under the vast Montana sky. Then Isaac gently urged the horse forward, and they rode back to town in comfortable silence, Rosalind's arms wrapped around his waist, her head resting against his broad back. The next few days fell into a pattern. Rosalind spent her days treating patients, building a reputation as a skilled healer. Word spread beyond Montana City, and people began traveling from surrounding homesteads to seek her help. Isaac stopped by every day, sometimes with a legitimate need like a rope burn or a bruised rib, sometimes with the flimsiest of excuses. On Wednesday, he brought her fresh vegetables from his ranch. On Thursday, he helped her gather wild herbs from the meadows outside town, teaching her which plants the local Crow tribe used for medicine. On Friday, he brought his sister Margaret to meet her. Margaret Landry Sullivan was a petite woman with Isaac's dark hair and warm smile. She took one look at Rosalind and declared them destined to be friends, then proceeded to drag her to the general store for a proper dress for the dance. "You cannot go in that old thing," Margaret said, gesturing at Rosalind's worn calico. "Isaac would never say anything, but I know for a fact he wants to show you off." "I cannot afford a new dress," Rosalind protested, but Margaret waved her hand dismissively. "Consider it a trade. My daughter has been having terrible nightmares. Maybe you have something that could help her sleep." Rosalind did, of course. She mixed chamomile, lavender, and a touch of valerian while Margaret pulled out a beautiful dress in deep green that brought out the copper highlights in Rosalind's hair. It was the finest thing she had owned in years, and when she put it on, she barely recognized herself in the mirror. "Perfect," Margaret declared. "My brother is going to swallow his tongue." Saturday evening arrived with agonizing slowness. Rosalind bathed, carefully arranged her hair, and put on the green dress. Mrs. Chen helped her with the buttons, clucking approvingly. "Very pretty. That Isaac, he is a lucky man." When Isaac arrived at exactly 7, Rosalind saw Margaret had been right about his reaction. He stood frozen in the doorway, his hat clutched in both hands, staring at her with an expression of pure wonder. "You look beautiful," he said finally, his voice rough. "Thank you," Rosalind replied, feeling her cheeks warm. "You clean up rather well yourself." He did indeed. Gone were the dusty trail clothes, replaced by clean trousers, a pressed white shirt, and a vest that emphasized his broad shoulders. His dark hair was neatly combed, and he smelled faintly of soap and leather. The church hall was packed with townspeople and ranchers from the surrounding area. A small band played enthusiastically, if not always in tune, and couples swirled across the floor in various states of coordination. Isaac led Rosalind through the crowd, his hand at the small of her back, introducing her to what seemed like half of Montana territory. When the music shifted to a slower waltz, Isaac turned to her. "May I?" Rosalind placed her hand in his, feeling his other hand settle at her waist, and let him guide her onto the floor. She had worried about not remembering the steps, but her body seemed to know what to do, following Isaac's lead naturally. "You said you were not much of a dancer," she accused playfully as he spun her expertly through a turn. "I may have downplayed my abilities," Isaac admitted with a grin. "Margaret forced me to take lessons when I was younger. I fought it every step of the way, but I suppose some of it stuck." They danced 3 songs in succession, and Rosalind could not remember the last time she felt this light, this happy. In Isaac's arms, the hardships of the past year seemed to fade away, replaced by possibility and hope. When they finally stepped outside for air, the night was cool and clear, stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on velvet. Isaac led her to a quiet spot behind the church, where they could still hear the music but had privacy. "Rosalind," he said, taking both her hands in his, "I need to tell you something, and I am just going to say it straight because that is the only way I know how. I am falling in love with you." Rosalind's heart stuttered in her chest. "Isaac, it has only been a week." I know it is crazy and too fast and probably foolish. But when I saw you on that road, when I offered to guard you for free, it was not just about doing the right thing. It was because I looked at you and something in me said her. Just that simple. Just that clear. Tears spilled down Rosalind's cheeks before she could stop them. "I came here to build a life, to survive on my own. I did not expect to find you. Is that a bad thing?" Isaac asked gently, reaching up to wipe away her tears. "No," Rosalind said, her voice breaking. "It is terrifying and wonderful, and I do not know what to do with these feelings." "Then maybe we figure it out together," Isaac suggested. "No rush, no pressure. Just let me court you properly, spend time with you, see where this goes." Rosalind looked up at him, at this good man who had appeared in her life like an answer to prayers. She had been too afraid to pray. She thought about her father, about how he had always told her that love was the greatest adventure of all. She thought about the past year of loneliness and struggle, and about how different her life already felt with Isaac in it. "I would like that," she whispered. Isaac's smile was radiant. He cupped her face in both hands, his thumbs brushing across her cheekbones, and Rosalind held her breath, thinking he might kiss her. But instead, he pressed his lips gently to her forehead, a gesture of tenderness that made her heart overflow. "Thank you," he murmured against her skin, "for trusting me." They stayed outside for a while longer, talking quietly about everything and nothing. Isaac told her about growing up on the ranch, about the hard work of building something from raw land. Rosalind told him about Denver, about her father's practice, about the patience she remembered from her childhood. "You miss the city?" Isaac asked. "Sometimes," Rosalind admitted. "But there is something about this place, about the openness and the sky and the possibility of it all. It feels like a place where you can become whoever you want to be." And who do you want to be? Rosalind thought about that. A week ago, she would have said she just wanted to survive, to build a small practice and eke out a living. But now, standing here with Isaac under the Montana stars, she wanted more. "Happy," she said finally. "I want to be happy. I want to help people, yes, but I also want a life that is more than just surviving. I want joy and love and maybe even a family someday." Isaac's eyes darkened with emotion. "I want those things too, with you if you will have me." "We barely know each other," Rosalind protested weakly. "Then let us fix that," Isaac said. "Tomorrow come out to the ranch, meet the hands, see where I live, how I spend my days. Let me show you my world." Rosalind agreed, and when Isaac brought her back to Mrs. Chen's that night, he kissed her hand at the doorway, his lips warm against her knuckles. "Sleep well, Rosalind Parker." "Good night, Isaac Landry." The next morning, Isaac arrived with a gentle mare named Daisy, saddled and ready. "Figured you should have your own horse," he explained. "Daisy is as sweet as they come, perfect for learning." They rode out to the Triple L, which turned out to be a sprawling ranch with a sturdy ranch house, several barns, and corrals filled with cattle and horses. The hands greeted Isaac with easy familiarity and regarded Rosalind with curious but friendly eyes. She could tell they were protective of their boss, sizing her up to see if she was worthy of him. Isaac showed her everything, from the bunkhouse to the pastures where his cattle grazed. He introduced her to his best breeding bull, a massive longhorn named Caesar, and to the barn cats that kept the mice at bay. He showed her the garden his mother had planted years ago, now somewhat overgrown but still producing vegetables. "Margaret used to tend it, but since she moved to town it has gotten away from me," Isaac admitted. "I am better with cattle than cucumbers." "It just needs some attention," Rosalind said, kneeling to pull a few weeds, "and maybe some herbs added. You could have fresh mint for tea, sage for cooking, lavender for the linens." Isaac crouched beside her, watching as she worked the soil with gentle hands. "Would you help me with it? I know you are busy with your practice, but maybe on Sundays." "I would like that," Rosalind said, meeting his eyes. "I would like that very much." They spent the afternoon working in the garden together, and Rosalind realized she had not felt this content in longer than she could remember. There was something deeply satisfying about working the earth, about planning for growth and tending to living things. Isaac was easy company, comfortable with silence but ready with a story or observation when the mood struck. As the sun began to set, Isaac led her to a spot on a small hill that overlooked the entire ranch. The land stretched out before them, golden in the evening light, vast and beautiful and full of promise. "I love it here," Isaac said quietly. "My father saw this land and knew it was ours, knew we could build something that would last. When he died, I was terrified I would not be able to live up to what he started. But I have worked hard and the ranch is thriving now. It is more than I ever expected to have." "He would be proud of you," Rosalind said. "I hope so." Isaac turned to her, his expression serious. "Rosalind, I know it is soon, but I need you to understand something. I am not a man who plays games or toys with feelings. When I care about someone, I care deeply, and I care about you. More than I thought possible after just a week." Rosalind felt her throat tighten with emotion. "I care about you too. It scares me how much." "Why does it scare you?" "Because caring means risking loss," Rosalind said, the words spilling out. "I lost my mother when I was 12. I lost my father last winter. I have spent the past year completely alone, and I learned to protect myself by not letting anyone get too close. But you, Isaac Landry, you just walked right past all my defenses like they were not even there." Isaac reached out and took her hand, threading their fingers together. "I lost my father too, I know that fear, but I also know that closing yourself off from caring is not living, it is just existing, and you deserve more than that." "So do you," Rosalind whispered. "Then maybe we can help each other," Isaac said. Maybe we can learn to trust in us together." Rosalind looked at their joined hands, at the calluses they both wore from hard work, at the way their fingers fit together like they were made for it. She thought about the past week, about how Isaac had protected her, helped her, asked for nothing in return. She thought about the way he looked at her, like she was precious and strong all at once. "I am falling in love with you too," she said, the admission both terrifying and liberating. "I tried to fight it, tried to tell myself it was too fast, too much, but my heart does not seem to care about logic." Isaac's face transformed, joy spreading across his features like sunrise. He brought her hand to his lips, pressing kisses to her knuckles, her wrist, her palm. "Thank you," he murmured. "Thank you for being brave enough to say it." "What do we do now?" Rosalind asked. Now I would very much like to kiss you if that would be acceptable." Rosalind's breath caught. Yes, that would be very acceptable." Isaac shifted closer, his hand coming up to cup her face with that gentleness that always made her melt. He gave her time to change her mind, his eyes searching hers for any hesitation. Finding none, he leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. When his lips finally met hers, it was soft and sweet and perfect. Rosalind's eyes fluttered closed, her hands coming up to rest on his chest where she could feel his heart beating as rapidly as her own. The kiss deepened gradually, Isaac's other hand sliding into her hair, cradling her head with infinite care. When they finally parted, both breathing hard, Isaac rested his forehead against hers. "I have been wanting to do that since the moment I saw you on that dusty road," he admitted. "You hit it well," Rosalind said, her voice shaky. "Years of poker with the ranch hands." Isaac smiled against her lips. "But I am done hiding how I feel. I want to be with you, Rosalind. Properly, with everyone knowing. I want to court you, take you to church on Sundays, have you at the ranch for dinners. I want the whole town to know you are mine and I am yours." "That is a very bold claim after one kiss," Rosalind teased, but her heart was singing. "Then I better make sure there are many more kisses to back it up," Isaac said, and proceeded to do exactly that over the following weeks. Isaac was true to his word. He courted Rosalind with a determination and tenderness that left her breathless. He showed up at Mrs. Chen's every morning with coffee and fresh pastries from the bakery. He escorted her on house calls to distant homesteads, serving as both protection and company. He brought her wildflowers picked from the meadows and books he thought she might enjoy. Rosalind's practice continued to grow. She treated everything from childhood ailments to serious injuries, and her reputation spread throughout the territory. People rode for hours to seek her help, and she never turned anyone away, accepting whatever they could pay, whether that was coins or eggs or labor. One particularly difficult case involved a young woman named Emily who had been having severe headaches and dizzy spells. Rosalind examined her carefully, asked detailed questions about symptoms and timing, and finally made a diagnosis. "You are with child," she told Emily gently. Emily burst into tears, but they were tears of joy. She had been married for 3 years with no success, and had begun to fear she could never have children. Rosalind prepared special teas to help with the morning sickness, and instructed Emily to rest as much as possible. 6 months later, she would deliver Emily's healthy baby boy, but that was still in the future. As summer deepened into late July, Isaac asked Rosalind to attend the annual cattle drive celebration with him. It was a big event, with ranchers from all over the territory gathering in Montana City for a weekend of competitions, dancing, and socializing. "Margaret thinks I should enter the bronco riding," Isaac said one evening as they sat on Mrs. Chen's porch, watching the sunset. "I told her I am too old for that nonsense, but she insists I need to defend the triple LTKS honor." How old are you? Rosalind asked, realizing she had never confirmed this basic detail. 27, Isaac said. Why, how old are you? 22. And I do not think 27 qualifies as too old for anything. Isaac laughed. Tell that to my back after a full day of fence mending, but maybe you are right. Maybe I will enter if only to have you there cheering for me. I would always cheer for you, Rosalind said softly. Isaac turned to her, his amber eyes intense in the fading light. Rosalind, there is something I need to ask you, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. Her heart began to race. All right. How would you feel about living at the ranch? Not immediately, he added quickly. But eventually. I know your practice is here in town, and I would never ask you to give that up. But maybe we could split time, or maybe some of your patients could come to the ranch. I just know that I want to wake up next to you every morning, and I want that to be in our home. Our home, Rosalind repeated, testing the words. I want to marry you, Isaac said bluntly. I know it has only been a month and people will say it is too fast, but I have never been more certain of anything in my life. You are it for me, Rosalind Parker. You are the person I want to build a life with, the person I want beside me through everything that comes. So I guess what I am asking is, would you consider it? Would you think about becoming my wife? Rosalind felt tears spill down her cheeks. A month ago, she had been alone on a dusty road, desperate and exhausted. Now this incredible man was asking her to share his life, his home, his future. I do not need to think about it, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Yes, yes, I will marry you, Isaac Landry. Isaac made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob, pulling her into his arms and holding her so tight she could barely breathe. Thank you, thank you. I promise I will spend every day making you happy. You already make me happy, Rosalind said into his shoulder, just by being you. They sat there for a long time, holding each other as the stars came out overhead. When Isaac finally pulled back, he reached into his vest pocket and drew out a simple gold band. It was my mother's, he said. My father gave it to me before he died, told me to give it to the woman who made my heart sing. I think he would have loved you. Rosalind held out a trembling hand and Isaac slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. When? She asked. Whenever you want. Tomorrow, next month, next year. I am not going anywhere. Soon, Rosalind decided. I do not want to wait. Life is too uncertain to waste time when you find something this good. Then soon it is, Isaac agreed, kissing her soundly. They decided on late August, giving them time to prepare but not so long that the waiting would be torture. Margaret threw herself into planning with enthusiasm, enlisting Mrs. Chen's help and that of several other town ladies. Rosalind found herself swept up in a whirlwind of dress fittings, menu planning, and guest lists. The cattle drive celebration arrived the last weekend of July, and true to his word, Isaac entered the bronco riding competition. Rosalind stood at the fence with Margaret, her heart in her throat as she watched Isaac climb onto a wild-eyed horse that looked like it wanted nothing more than to kill him. The horse exploded out of the chute, bucking and twisting with violent determination. Isaac held on with one hand raised high, his body moving with the horse's rhythm in a display of skill and strength that made the crowd roar. When the bell rang 8 seconds later, he dismounted cleanly, tipping his hat to the cheering crowd. He won the competition, and when he came to collect his prize, he looked straight at Rosalind and said, "This is for my future wife." The crowd erupted in congratulations and good-natured ribbing. Isaac swept Rosalind into his arms, spinning her around despite her protests, his joy infectious and complete. That night, at the dance that followed the competition, Isaac held Rosalind close as they swayed to a slow waltz. "Are you happy?" he asked softly. Happier than I ever thought possible, Rosalind replied honestly. Sometimes I am afraid I will wake up and find this was all a dream. It is not a dream, Isaac assured her. This is real as anything I have ever known. You and me, we are going to build something beautiful together. Tell me about it, Rosalind said. Tell me about our future. Isaac smiled, his eyes going distant with dreams. I see us in the ranch house with that garden full of your herbs. I see children, maybe 3 or 4, running around the yard. I see us working together, you with your healing and me with the ranch. I see growing old together, sitting on that porch we will add to the house, watching our grandchildren play. I see that too, Rosalind whispered. I see morning coffee together, nights by the fire. I see you teaching our sons to ride and me teaching our daughters about medicine. I see a partnership, a true partnership where we support each other in everything. Our sons and daughters, Isaac repeated, wonder in his voice. I love the sound of that. As August approached, however, trouble arrived in the form of Jack Davies and his gang of rustlers. They had been quiet for weeks, but now cattle began disappearing from ranches throughout the area, including the Triple L. Isaac spent long days tracking the thieves, coming home exhausted and frustrated. They are getting bolder, he told Rosalind one evening as she tended to a rope burn on his hand. Hit 3 ranches in one night last week. The sheriff does not have the manpower to stop them. Maybe you should leave it to the law, Rosalind said, worry making her voice sharp. The law is one tired old sheriff and a deputy who barely knows which end of a gun to hold, Isaac replied. If we do not stop them, they will bleed these ranches dry. Rosalind did not like it, but she understood. This was Isaac's livelihood, his legacy. She could not ask him to stand by while thieves destroyed what his father had built. 2 weeks before their wedding, Isaac rode out with Tom, Charlie, and several other ranchers to confront the rustlers. They had tracked them to a box canyon about 20 miles from town, where they were holding stolen cattle before moving them across the territorial border. Rosalind spent that day in agony, unable to focus on her patients, jumping at every sound. When sunset came with no word, she began to pace. Margaret came to sit with her, trying to provide comfort, but both women were too worried to do more than hold hands and wait. It was nearly midnight when hoofbeats sounded in the street. Rosalind ran to the door, her heart in her throat. Isaac dismounted slowly, and even in the lamplight she could see he was hurt. Blood soaked his left sleeve, and he moved stiffly. I am all right, he said before she could panic. Just a graze. Davies got off a lucky shot before we captured them. Rosalind pulled him inside, ignoring his protests that he was fine. She cut away his shirt, revealing a deep furrow across his upper arm where a bullet had torn through the flesh. It had missed the bone, but it was still serious. This needs stitches, she said, her hands remarkably steady despite her racing heart. Then I am in good hands, Isaac said, attempting a smile. Rosalind cleaned the wound with whiskey, making Isaac hiss through his teeth, then carefully stitched the torn flesh. Her father had taught her this skill, and she was grateful for it now as she worked by lamplight, taking tiny, precise stitches that would minimize scarring. Did you get them all? She asked as she worked. All except Davies himself. He got away, but we recovered the cattle and captured 4 of his men. The sheriff has them locked up now. And Davies, Isaac's jaw tightened. He swore he would make me pay for interfering with his business. It is probably just talk, but I want you to be careful until he is caught. I want you to be careful, Rosalind countered. No more chasing outlaws. We have a wedding in 2 weeks, and I will not walk down that aisle alone. I promise, Isaac said, catching her hand and bringing it to his lips despite the fact that she was still holding a bloody needle. No more heroics. I have too much to live for now. Rosalind finished the stitching and bandaged the wound carefully. No heavy lifting for at least a week. I will make you a poultice to prevent infection, and you need to rest. Yes, madam, Isaac said meekly, but his eyes were dancing with amusement. I am serious, Isaac. This could get infected and you could lose the arm or worse. His expression sobered. I know. I will follow your instructions exactly. I am sorry I scared you. Rosalind sat beside him on the bed, suddenly exhausted. When I saw you bleeding, I thought my heart would stop. I cannot lose you. Not now, not when we are just beginning. Isaac pulled her close with his good arm, tucking her head under his chin. You are not going to lose me. I survived the war, Indian raids, stampedes, and countless other dangers. A scratch from a cowardly rustler is not going to take me down. You were in the war, Rosalind asked. She realized there was still so much they did not know about each other, so many stories left to share. Tail end of it when I was just 17, Isaac said. Fought at Nashville. Saw things I try not to remember. When it ended, I came home and threw myself into building the ranch. Seemed like the best way to forget the bad and focus on creating something good. Did it work? Mostly. Some things stay with you no matter how hard you try to leave them behind. But being with you, it is like getting a fresh start. Like all those hard years led me to exactly where I needed to be. They sat together in comfortable silence until Margaret poked her head in. You decent, she called out, then entered without waiting for an answer. Thank goodness you are all right. When Tom came by to say there had been shooting, I thought I would die. I am fine, Isaac assured his sister. Rosalind patched me up beautifully. Margaret looked at the neat bandage and nodded approvingly. Good. Because if you had gotten yourself killed 2 weeks before your wedding, I would have brought you back to life just to kill you again myself. Despite everything, they all laughed, the tension breaking like a summer storm passing. The next 2 weeks passed in a flurry of final preparations. Rosalind saw patients during the day and worked on wedding preparations in the evening. Isaac, under strict orders to rest his arm, spent his time making sure the ranch house was ready for its new mistress. He added a room specifically for Rosalind's herbs and medicines, with shelves and a large work table. He repaired the porch and added a swing. He even attempted to spruce up the garden, though he cheerfully admitted that he had probably killed as many plants as he helped. 3 days before the wedding, as Rosalind was treating a child's fever, gunshots rang out in the street. Her blood turned to ice. She ran to the window in time to see Jack Davies and 2 men riding hard through town, firing wildly. People scattered, diving for cover. Isaac appeared from the direction of the livery, his gun already drawn despite his injured arm. He took cover behind a water trough and returned fire, his shots precise and controlled. Davies wheeled his horse around, his gun aimed directly at Isaac. Rosalind did not think. She grabbed the nearest heavy object, a cast iron mortar she used for grinding herbs, and ran out into the street. Isaac, down, she screamed, and hurled the mortar with all her strength. It flew through the air in a perfect arc and struck Davies's horse in the shoulder. The animal reared, throwing off Davies's aim. His shot went wild, the bullet slamming into the trough inches from Isaac's head. Before Davies could fire again, Isaac's next shot found its mark, hitting Davies in the shoulder and knocking him from his horse. The sheriff and deputy emerged with rifles, and Davies's companions surrendered immediately. Within minutes, all 3 outlaws were in custody, Davies clutching his bleeding shoulder and cursing. Isaac strode over to Rosalind, who was standing in the middle of the street, shaking with adrenaline and terror. He holstered his gun and pulled her into his arms. That was the bravest and stupidest thing I have ever seen, he said into her hair. You could have been killed. So could you, Rosalind shot back. I was not about to lose you to that monster. We make quite a pair, Isaac said with a shaky laugh, both too stubborn to let the other get hurt. The sheriff came over, Davies and his men in custody. That was some throw, Miss Parker. Saved Landry's life, no question. She saved mine long before today, Isaac said, his arms tightening around Rosalind. With Davies captured, the threat that had been hanging over them finally lifted. The next 3 days felt lighter, filled with anticipation rather than fear. Rosalind moved her belongings out to the ranch, marveling at the room Isaac had prepared for her practice. Margaret helped her arrange the herbs and supplies, chattering excitedly about the wedding. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and beautiful, the sky a brilliant blue that stretched forever. Rosalind dressed in a simple white gown that Margaret had helped her sew, with wildflowers woven into her auburn hair. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Gone was the desperate, exhausted traveler who had arrived in Montana City 2 months ago. In her place stood a woman who was loved and cherished, who had found her place in the world. The ceremony was held in the small church, packed with townspeople and ranchers who had become friends. Rosalind walked down the aisle alone, carrying a bouquet of wildflowers, her eyes locked on Isaac waiting at the altar. He wore a black suit, his dark hair neatly combed, and his expression as she approached was one of pure wonder. When she reached him, he took her hands in his, and Rosalind saw moisture glistening in his eyes. The minister spoke about love and commitment, about building a life together through good times and bad. But Rosalind barely heard the words. All she could see was Isaac. All she could feel was the rightness of this moment, the absolute certainty that this was exactly where she belonged. "I do," she said when the minister asked if she took this man to be her husband. "I do," Isaac echoed moments later, his voice strong and sure. "You may kiss your bride." Isaac cupped Rosalind's face in both hands, his touch infinitely gentle, and kissed her with a tenderness that made her heart overflow. The church erupted in applause and cheers, but Rosalind barely heard it over the pounding of her own heart. They were married. She was Rosalind Landry now, and the impossible future Isaac had described was no longer a dream but a promise they would fulfill together. The celebration that followed was joyous and boisterous. Mrs. Chen had prepared a feast, and there was dancing and music late into the night. But eventually, Isaac and Rosalind slipped away, riding back to the ranch under a sky full of stars. At the ranch house, Isaac swept Rosalind up into his arms, carrying her over the threshold with a grin. "Welcome home, Mrs. Landry." "Mrs. Landry," Rosalind repeated, testing the name. "I think I could get used to that." Isaac set her down gently, his hand settling at her waist. "I love you, Rosalind. I loved you the moment I saw you on that road, offering your herbs for protection. I loved you when I said I would guard you for free. I loved you through every moment since, and I will love you through every moment to come." "I love you too," Rosalind whispered, her hands coming up to frame his face. "You changed my life, Isaac. You gave me hope when I had none, love when I had given up on it. You are my home." They kissed then, slow and deep, full of promise and passion. When they finally pulled apart, Isaac led Rosalind to their bedroom, to the life they would build together from this moment forward. The months that followed were a time of adjustment and joy. Rosalind split her time between her practice in town and building a life at the ranch. She kept regular hours at Mrs. Chen's boarding house 3 days a week, and the other days she saw patients who made the journey to the ranch. Her reputation continued to grow, and she found herself treating people from as far as 50 miles away. Isaac supported her work completely, often riding with her on difficult house calls, helping carry her supplies and offering comfort to worried families. He never questioned her dedication to healing, never asked her to give it up. Instead, he built on the ranch, creating a small clinic building where she could see patients comfortably. Their partnership was everything Rosalind had dreamed of and more. They worked side by side in the garden, Isaac finally learning to tell the difference between herbs and weeds under her patient tutelage. They spent evenings on the porch Isaac had built, watching the sun set over their land and making plans for the future. Winter came early that year, blanketing Montana in snow by November. Rosalind found herself homebound more often, which gave her time to organize her supplies and write down recipes and treatments she had learned from her father. Isaac spent the short days managing the ranch and the long evenings by the fire with his wife, reading aloud while she worked on needlepoint or prepared medicines. It was a good life, a rich life. But it was in late January, as Rosalind was preparing breakfast one morning, that everything changed. The smell of bacon cooking, which she normally loved, suddenly made her stomach turn. She barely made it outside before she was violently ill. Isaac found her leaning against the porch railing, pale and shaking. "What is wrong? Are you sick?" The worry in his voice was palpable. Rosalind looked up at him, realization dawning. She had been so busy with her practice and settling into married life that she had not noticed the signs. But now they were unmistakable. "I am with child," she said, wonder filling her voice. Isaac froze, his eyes going wide. "What? Are you sure?" "I am a healer, Isaac. I know the signs. I am absolutely sure." For a moment, Isaac simply stared at her. Then his face broke into the most radiant smile Rosalind had ever seen. He let out a whoop of joy that echoed across the ranch, scooped her up despite her protests, and spun her around. "We are having a baby. Rosalind, we are having a baby." His joy was contagious, and Rosalind found herself laughing through happy tears. "Yes, we are. Probably in late August or early September." Isaac set her down carefully, his hands immediately going to her still flat stomach. "There is a baby in there, our baby." "There is," Rosalind confirmed, covering his hands with hers. "I am going to be a father." Isaac said it like he was testing the words, then again with more confidence. "I am going to be a father. We need to add on to the house. We need to build a nursery. We need to get a cradle, clothes, toys. We need to tell Margaret. She's going to lose her mind with excitement." "Isaac." Rosalind caught his face, making him focus on her. "We have time, plenty of time to prepare." But she was smiling because his excitement was endearing, and his love already so evident. Their child would be cherished beyond measure. Margaret did indeed lose her mind with excitement when they told her a week later. She immediately began planning, recruiting the other ranch wives to help prepare baby clothes and supplies. The entire community seemed to celebrate the news, and Rosalind found herself the recipient of countless gifts and well wishes. As her pregnancy progressed, Rosalind had to adjust her practice. She could no longer make long rides to distant homesteads, so Isaac took over those duties, carrying her medicines and instructions to patients she could not reach. She continued to see patients at the ranch clinic, and the community respected her needs, not calling her out except in true emergencies. Isaac was attentive to the point of being overbearing. He insisted she rest more, eat more, avoid any heavy lifting. Rosalind tolerated his hovering with good humor, understanding it came from love and perhaps a touch of fear. They were both first-time parents, venturing into unknown territory together. In early May, a family passing through to Oregon stopped at the ranch, their wagon broken and their youngest child burning with fever. Rosalind examined the little girl, recognizing immediately the signs of scarlet fever. It was serious, potentially deadly, especially in a child so young. "You cannot travel," she told the parents firmly. "The journey would likely kill her. You need to stay here until she recovers." The family, the Johnsons, had little money and nowhere else to go. Isaac immediately offered them the bunkhouse, and Rosalind began the intensive treatment the child needed. For 3 days, she barely slept, monitoring the girl constantly, administering cooling compresses and herbal remedies to bring down the fever. Isaac worried about Rosalind overexerting herself in her condition, but he did not try to stop her. He knew this was who she was, this calling to heal, and he supported her by bringing her meals, making sure she rested when she could, and praying alongside her for the child's recovery. On the 4th day, the fever broke. The little girl opened her eyes, weak but lucid, and asked for her mother. Mrs. Johnson broke down in tears of relief, and Mr. Johnson tried to pay Rosalind with their last few coins. "Keep your money," Rosalind said gently. "You will need it to rebuild your wagon and continue your journey. Just promise me you will be careful, take your time, and not push yourselves too hard." The Johnsons stayed another week, helping around the ranch to show their gratitude, before continuing their journey west. As Rosalind watched their wagon disappear into the distance, Isaac came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her expanded waist. "You saved that little girl's life," he said. "That is what I do," Rosalind replied simply. "I know. It is one of the many reasons I love you." Isaac's hands moved to her swollen belly. "Our child is lucky to have you as a mother." Their son was born on a sweltering day in late August, almost exactly a year after their wedding. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Isaac, pacing outside the bedroom with Margaret and Mrs. Chen attending inside, feared he would lose them both. But Rosalind was strong, and when the first cry of their baby pierced the air, Isaac nearly collapsed with relief. Margaret opened the door, tears streaming down her face. "You have a son," she said. "A beautiful, healthy son, and Rosalind is fine, tired but fine." Isaac burst into the room to find his wife exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a soft blanket. The baby had a shock of dark hair and was wailing lustily, his face red with indignation at being thrust into the world. "Meet your son," Rosalind said softly, and Isaac carefully took the baby into his arms. He was perfect. 10 tiny fingers, 10 tiny toes, eyes that would probably turn from blue to brown like his father's. Isaac felt something crack open in his chest, a well of love so deep and fierce it nearly overwhelmed him. "Hello, little man," he whispered. "I am your papa. I am going to love you and protect you and teach you everything I know." They named him James Patrick Landry, after both their fathers. He was a good baby, healthy and hungry, and both parents fell completely under his spell. Isaac was a devoted father, getting up for nighttime feedings, walking the floor when James fussed, changing diapers without complaint. As autumn painted the Montana landscape in shades of gold and scarlet, life at the Triple L settled into a new rhythm. Rosalind gradually returned to her practice, seeing patients at the ranch clinic while James slept nearby in a cradle Isaac had lovingly built. The community was respectful of her new responsibilities, understanding when she could not come immediately or had to bring the baby along on house calls. Isaac proved to be as good a father as he was a husband. He balanced ranch work with family time, and Rosalind often found him in the nursery late at night, just watching James sleep with an expression of wonder on his face. "I never knew I could love something this much," he confessed one evening as they sat together on the porch, James sleeping in Rosalind's arms. "I mean, I love you more than life itself, but this is different. He is so small, so dependent on us. It terrifies me and fills me with joy all at once." "I know exactly what you mean," Rosalind said, gazing down at their son's perfect face. "Sometimes I look at him and cannot believe he is ours, that we created him." "Do you ever think about that day?" Isaac asked. "The day we met, all the time," Rosalind admitted. "I was so scared, so alone. I had been bartering herbs for protection for weeks, just trying to survive. Then you appeared and changed everything. I took one look at you and knew my life would never be the same," Isaac said. "You were standing there in that dusty road, chin up despite your fear, offering your herbs like they were the most valuable thing in the world. And when I said to keep your herbs, that I would guard you for free, I meant it. But it was never really for free. You gave me your heart, your trust, your love. You gave me a family and a future I had stopped believing I could have." Rosalind leaned against him, careful not to jostle the sleeping baby. "You gave me all of those things too. You gave me a home, not just a house, but a real home where I am loved and valued. You supported my work when you could have asked me to give it up. You became a partner in the truest sense." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun paint the sky in brilliant colors as it sank toward the horizon. This was their life now, this perfect blend of love and work and family. It was not always easy. There were difficult births and patients she could not save. There were harsh winters and droughts that threatened the ranch. There were sleepless nights with a teething baby and days when exhaustion seemed overwhelming. But through it all, they had each other. And that made everything worthwhile. The years flowed by like a gentle river, each season bringing new joys and challenges. When James was 2, Rosalind found herself expecting again. This time, she gave birth to twin daughters, Emma and Grace, who arrived in early spring with matching rosebud mouths and their mother's auburn hair. Isaac was completely overwhelmed by the twins, terrified he would mix them up despite Rosalind's assurances that she would know them apart. "They are identical," he protested, holding one baby in each arm and looking between them frantically. "Emma has a tiny birthmark behind her left ear," Rosalind explained patiently. "And Grace's right eye has a small fleck of gold in the iris. You will learn to see the differences." And he did. Within weeks, Isaac could tell his daughters apart as easily as breathing, and he doted on them shamelessly. James, now a sturdy toddler, took his role as big brother seriously, always wanting to help with the babies. Rosalind's practice continued to flourish. She had trained 2 young women from town as assistants, teaching them about herbs and basic medical care so they could help with the increasing demand for her services. The clinic at the ranch expanded, and people came from farther and farther away to seek her help. Isaac's ranch prospered as well. The cattle were healthy, the land was productive, and he had built a reputation as an honest, fair man to do business with. Together, he and Rosalind were pillars of the Montana City community, respected and loved by their neighbors. When the twins were 3 and James was 5, Rosalind gave birth to their 4th child, another son they named Daniel. Isaac joked that they were building their own ranch crew, but his joy was evident. He loved being a father, loved the chaos and laughter and constant motion of a house full of children. Life was not without its sorrows. Mrs. Chen passed away peacefully in her sleep when Daniel was 6 months old, and Rosalind grieved the loss of the woman who had given her a chance when she first arrived in Montana City. They attended the funeral together, the whole family, and Rosalind made sure her children understood the kindness Mrs. Chen had shown to a desperate stranger so many years ago. Margaret had 3 children of her own now, and the cousins spent countless hours playing together at the ranch or in town. Isaac and his sister remained close, and Rosalind treasured her sister-in-law's friendship and support. There were hard times, too. A drought one summer nearly destroyed the ranch, but they survived by careful management and the support of their community. A winter influenza epidemic swept through Montana City, and Rosalind worked day and night treating patients, losing some despite her best efforts. Those losses haunted her, but Isaac was always there to remind her that she saved far more than she lost, that her presence in Montana City had saved countless lives over the years. Through everything, their love remained constant. They still sat on the porch in the evenings when they could steal a quiet moment, still talked about their hopes and dreams. They still looked at each other with the same wonder and affection that had sparked on that dusty road so many years ago. One evening, when Rosalind was 40 and Isaac was 45, they celebrated their 18th wedding anniversary. The children were all in bed, the house finally quiet. They sat on the porch swing Isaac had built when they first married, watching the stars come out. "Do you remember what you said to me the day we met?" Rosalind asked, her head on Isaac's shoulder. "Keep your herbs, I will guard you for free," Isaac recited. "How could I forget? It was the smartest thing I ever said." "You have guarded me every day since," Rosalind said softly. "Not just from physical danger, but from loneliness, from despair, from giving up. You have been my strength when I was weak and my comfort when I was hurting." "You have done the same for me," Isaac replied. "You gave my life meaning beyond just working the ranch. You gave me love and family and a purpose bigger than myself. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Rosalind Landry. And you are the best thing that ever happened to me, Isaac Landry." They kissed then, slow and sweet, a kiss that held 18 years of love and partnership and unwavering commitment. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. "Should we check on the children?" Rosalind asked, though she made no move to get up. "They are fine," Isaac said. "Let us just sit here a while longer. These moments, just the two of us, are precious." So they sat together under the Montana stars, holding hands and watching their world. In the distance, they could see the lights of Montana City, the place where their story had truly begun. Beyond that stretched the vast prairie, wild and beautiful, and theirs. James was 17 now, tall and strong like his father, already taking on significant responsibility at the ranch. He had Isaac's work ethic and Rosalind's compassion, and they knew he would do well in life. The twins were 15, Emma showing an interest in healing like her mother, while Grace had a gift with horses that rivaled her father's. Daniel, at 12, was still finding his way but showed promise as both a rancher and a healer, interested in animal medicine. Their family had grown and thrived in ways Rosalind could never have imagined that day on the road. Sometimes she still thought about the woman she had been then, desperate and alone, bartering herbs for survival. That woman had been strong, but she had been operating from fear. The woman she was now, sitting beside her husband with their children sleeping safely inside, operated from love. "What are you thinking about?" Isaac asked, always attuned to her moods. "About how far we have come," Rosalind replied. "About how grateful I am for everything we have built together." "We have built something pretty amazing," Isaac agreed. "But you know what? I think we are not done yet. I think there are still adventures ahead, still dreams to fulfill." "Like what?" Rosalind asked, intrigued. "Like watching our children grow up and fall in love and start families of their own. Like becoming grandparents, like growing old together and looking back on a life well lived." Isaac squeezed her hand. "Like spending every remaining day I have on this earth loving you with everything I am." Rosalind felt tears prick her eyes, the happy kind that came from being overwhelmed with love and gratitude. "That sounds perfect." "It does not it?" Isaac smiled, pulling her closer. Who knew that a desperate woman on a dusty road and a cowboy who could not resist helping her would end up here? I think maybe we were always meant to end up here, Rosalind said thoughtfully. All those hard things we went through, all the loss and struggle, it led us to each other. It led us to this life, this family, this love. I believe you are right, Isaac said. I believe every step of my life was leading me to that moment when I saw you on the road, and I would walk through it all again, every hard moment, every struggle, if it meant ending up right here with you. They sat together until the night grew late, talking quietly about everything and nothing, secure in the knowledge that they had found something rare and precious. Their love story had begun with herbs bartered for protection, but it had grown into something far more valuable than either could have imagined. Years continued to pass in a rhythm of seasons and celebrations, challenges and triumphs. James married at 21, bringing home a sweet-natured woman named Sarah who fit into the family as if she had always been there. 2 years later, he made Isaac and Rosalind grandparents for the first time with the birth of their grandson, Isaac Jr. Isaac wept openly when he held his namesake for the first time, and Rosalind fell in love all over again watching her husband with their grandchild. The circle of life had continued, their legacy extending into a new generation. Emma pursued healing like her mother, eventually taking over much of Rosalind's practice as Rosalind scaled back to consult on difficult cases and teach the next generation. Grace married a horse trainer and moved to Wyoming, though she visited often with her growing family. Daniel became a veterinarian, one of the first in the territory, and worked alongside his father managing the health of the ranch's livestock. As Rosalind and Isaac moved into their 60s, they finally allowed themselves to slow down. They turned most of the ranch operations over to James and Daniel, though Isaac still rode out most mornings to check on things. Rosalind continued to see patients, but only a few days a week, and always with Emma or one of her other trained assistants present. They had more time for each other now, more quiet evenings on the porch, more lazy mornings sipping coffee and watching the sunrise. They traveled a bit, visiting Grace in Wyoming and taking a trip to Denver where Rosalind showed Isaac where she had grown up, introducing him to a past he had only heard about in stories. But they always came back to Montana City, to the Triple L Ranch, to the home they had built together. This was where they belonged, where their roots ran deep. One evening in late summer when Rosalind was 64 and Isaac was 69, they sat together on the porch as they had thousands of times before. The ranch stretched out before them, prosperous and peaceful, the legacy they would leave behind. In the distance, they could see James working with some horses, Daniel checking on the cattle, Emma arriving for dinner with her husband and children. "We did all right, did we not?" Isaac said, his voice rougher with age but still strong. "We did better than all right," Rosalind replied, taking his weathered hand in hers. "We built a life filled with love and purpose. We raised good children who are raising good children. We helped people, healed people, made this community better. I could not have asked for more." "I love you, Rosalind," Isaac said, turning to look at her. His hair was white now, his face lined with age, but his eyes still held that amber warmth that had captured her heart so many years ago. "I've loved you every single day since I first saw you on that road. You are the best decision I ever made." "I love you too," Rosalind said, her voice thick with emotion. "You saved me in every way a person can be saved. You gave me everything I never knew I needed." They kissed, soft and tender, a kiss that held 42 years of marriage and partnership and unwavering devotion. When they pulled apart, both were smiling through their tears. The family gathered for dinner that night, 3 generations around the table that Isaac had built when they first married. There was laughter and teasing, stories and plans, the comfortable chaos of a large family that loved each other deeply. Rosalind looked around the table at the faces she loved most in the world and felt her heart overflow with gratitude. This was her legacy, these people around this table. Not just the children she had given birth to, but the lives she had touched as a healer, the community she and Isaac had helped build. The desperate woman who had bartered herbs for protection had found so much more than safety. She had found a home, a purpose, a love that had sustained her through everything. As the evening wound down and the grandchildren were tucked into beds scattered throughout the house, Rosalind and Isaac returned to their porch. It was their place, their sanctuary, the spot where they had shared so many quiet moments over the years. "You ever wonder what would have happened if you had just ridden past me that day?" Rosalind asked, though she had asked this question before over the years. "Never," Isaac said firmly. "Because I do not believe that was ever a possibility. I think we were meant to find each other, meant to build this life together. Call it fate or destiny or divine providence, but I believe we were always heading toward each other." "I believe that too," Rosalind said, leaning against him. "And I am grateful every day that you saw me, that you stopped, that you said those words that changed my life." "Keep your herbs, I will guard you for free," Isaac recited with a smile. "Best offer I ever made." "Best offer I ever accepted," Rosalind agreed. They sat together as the stars came out, holding hands and watching the night settle over their land. They had been given a great gift, these years together, this love that had sustained them through everything. They had started with nothing more than a chance meeting on a dusty road and built something beautiful and lasting. As they finally rose to go inside, Isaac paused to look out over the ranch one more time. "You know what the best part is?" "What?" Rosalind asked. "We still have time. More sunrises to watch, more grandchildren to spoil, more quiet evenings right here on this porch. Our story is not over yet." "No," Rosalind agreed, taking his hand and leading him inside. "It is not over, not by a long shot, and it was not." They had many more years together, watching their family grow, their legacy expand. They were there when Emma had her 4th child, when Grace's oldest son took over her horse training business, when Daniel revolutionized animal care in Montana Territory. They celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary surrounded by children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren, the house bursting with love and laughter. Through it all, their love remained the foundation everything else was built upon. They still held hands when they walked. They still kissed each other good morning and good night. They still sat on that porch, older and slower but no less devoted, watching the world they had built together. Isaac passed away peacefully in his sleep at 76, with Rosalind beside him as she had been for 54 years. His last words were, "I love you, always have, always will." Rosalind grieved deeply but not bitterly. They had been given more time together than many people ever got, and every moment had been precious. She lived another 8 years, continuing to see patients occasionally, spending time with her family, and sitting on that porch every evening, feeling Isaac's presence beside her. When Rosalind finally passed at 80, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, her last thought was of a dusty road in Montana Territory, of a tall cowboy with amber eyes who had stopped to help a desperate woman, and of the words that had changed everything. "Keep your herbs. I will guard you for free." She had kept her herbs, building a healing practice that had touched countless lives. But Isaac had kept his promise too, guarding her heart and soul for free for the rest of his life, giving her a love that had sustained her through everything. Their story was complete now, a love story that had begun in the Wild West and lasted a lifetime. They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the Triple L Ranch beneath headstones that read simply, Isaac and Rosalind Landry, beloved, forever together. The ranch continued to prosper under James's management, and Emma's healing work expanded to include a clinic in Montana City, named in honor of her mother. The family they had created continued to grow and flourish, generation after generation, all of them carrying forward the values Isaac and Rosalind had lived by. Hard work, compassion, loyalty, and above all, love. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the stars came out over Montana, family members swore they could see two figures sitting together on the porch of the old ranch house, holding hands and watching over the legacy they had built. The story of the healer who bartered herbs for protection and the cowboy who guarded her for free became family legend, told and retold to each new generation as an example of true love, the kind that transforms lives and builds legacies that last forever. Their love had started with a simple offer of protection, but it had grown into something far greater. It had been a partnership of equals, a meeting of two souls who recognized each other and chose, every single day, to build a life together. It had weathered every storm, celebrated every joy, and created a family that would carry their love forward long after they were gone. In the end, that was the true measure of their love. Not just the years they had together, precious as those were, but the ripples they sent out into the world through their children and grandchildren, through the patients Rosalind healed and the community they helped build. Their love had been a force for good, transforming not just their own lives but the lives of everyone they touched. And it had all begun on a dusty road in Montana Territory in the summer of 1876, when a desperate woman offered herbs for protection, and a cowboy said the words that would change both their lives forever. "Keep your herbs. I will guard you for free."